let's do another installment of our New Faces in New Places segment. And this week, we're going to talk about Luke Fickell and Wisconsin. I think it's important to start with who Wisconsin is and why Luke Fickell is the right guy for the job, and then what you can expect from Wisconsin in 2023. So until Barry Alvarez becomes head coach at Wisconsin, nobody really thought about Wisconsin as a league. That's just a fact. 4 years in, 1993, his Wisconsin team reaches the Rose Bowl, and they've had a steady stream of excellence for nearly 40 years, or 30 years now, right? We're also talking about great tailbacks and running the football. So much so that is what Coach Alvarez used to say was the thing that made Wisconsin, Wisconsin. We're going to run the football, right? And if you can't stop the run, we're probably not going to pass. And that has been their identity up until this season. It's a long time. And you think about some of the tailbacks that came through there and the offensive linemen that come through there, you can understand why some folks would be, well, reluctant to change the offense. But that is one of the things that Luke Fickell has chosen to do. Now, the reason that Luke Fickell is the head coach at Wisconsin is because Paul Chryst got fired after a 2-3 start to 2022. To which you might ask, how does a guy that goes 67-26 with 4 out of his first 5 seasons ending with 10 victories or more, and having led Wisconsin to a 13-0 record into the Big Ten championship game, 2017, they lose that one 27-21 to Ohio State, end up getting fired for basically doing what you've come to know from Wisconsin, which is win a bunch of football games, but not necessarily win the Big Ten championship, and certainly not play for a national championship. These are things that Luke Fickell has done, okay? So the first thing to know about Luke Fickell is that, yeah, he was defensive coordinator on a national championship team, and he was, by default, a defensive coordinator on a national championship team that reached the college football playoff and won the Big Ten championship. But then he went to Cincinnati. And what he did at Cincinnati, we might not see again with the playoff expanding to 12 teams here in just about 18 months, right? What he did was lead Cincinnati to not just an undefeated regular season and a conference championship, but a berth in the college football playoff in 2021, which means that Luke Fickell had achieved with Cincinnati what nobody had achieved at Wisconsin, and that is what Wisconsin is hiring. I understand how some folks are still very much loyal to Coach Chryst, and I can understand that. I also see why, if you are running Wisconsin and you would like to see the Badger football team break through, you would go get a guy who has been seated and understands the Big Ten and has also achieved at a high level with, frankly, fewer resources. So you go get your guy, and I think Luke Fickell was chomping at the bit to get to the job because he ended up coaching Wisconsin in their bowl game last year. And I thought that was really exciting and a great move on his part, because what better way to understand what you have than to see them in a live game environment with a chance to go either 7-6 or 6-7. And you know, like I know, having a winning record versus having a losing record makes all the difference. As an Oklahoma fan, 7-6 versus Florida State would have been much better than 6-7 with a loss to Florida State. So he gets an understanding of what the personnel is like and just who he thinks he can build around in 2023. But he also brings in his own guys. And this is where it starts to get very interesting and, quite frankly, fun as a Wisconsin fan. So Mike Tressel came over with Luke Fickell as a defense coordinator at Wisconsin after 2 seasons as a defense coordinator at Cincinnati. He is the nephew of Jim Tressel, who, yes, had employed Luke Fickell at one point. And frankly, Mike Tressel had worked as a grad assistant on that 2002 Ohio State National Championship team. So what are you getting in Mike Tressel? Well, you're getting a guy that developed Sauce Gardner into a consensus All-American, into the guy that would become an All-Pro in his rookie year and win Defensive Rookie of the Year in the NFL just this year with the New York Jets. You're also talking about a guy that helped develop Kobe Bryant, Kobe with a C-O-B-Y, not a K-O-B-E, who won the Thorpe Award in 2021. 2 outstanding defensive backs that came out of Cincinnati. What might you be able to do at a place like Wisconsin? And this is after 14 years as an assistant at Michigan State. First joining over in 2004 when Mark D'Antonio took that job and basically staying on as a co-defensive coordinator until Luke Fickell offered him the job following the departure of Marcus Freeman to Notre Dame. Now, I really was interested to see what the defense would look like with Wisconsin's runs because that 3-4 that they ran with Jim Leonhard was stout. Matter of fact, that might be your worry. If you're a Wisconsin fan is, hey, man, we've been one of the better defensive teams in football for the past decade. And a lot of that is about Coach Leonhard. Well, knowing that they're going from that 3-4 to something like a 3-3 stack might give you the willies, but I've been made to understand by folks inside the program that when they see 11 personnel, it's probably going to look a lot like what you're used to seeing, right? Other than that, they're just going to try to match up defensive backs with wide receivers and pass catchers. And I think that's a smart thing to do given what the Big Ten is even changing into, right? Michigan will throw the ball. Ohio State will certainly throw the ball. Purdue is going to throw the ball. As a matter of fact, when you're getting down to it, you're talking about perhaps Nebraska, maybe Iowa, and Illinois as teams that you might think of as we're going to run the ball until we can't anymore. And that's a great way to build a program. Just look at what Brett Bielema, a former Wisconsin Badger head coach, has done at Illinois and turning into a pretty doggone good football team and one that scared the hell out of the Big Ten champ that is Michigan during the regular season. So that's the defensive side. And frankly, that was the one that I was most concerned about. The guy that Luke Fickell managed to hire on the offense ought to make you very, very excited as a Badger fan because Phil Longo is that dude. My favorite story to tell about Phil Longo actually comes from Mack Brown. So Mack Brown, when he's coming back to coach, and he had set it on North Carolina as the place where he wanted to come back, used his connections as, well, former head coach of Texas and having worked in TV for so long to reach out to some coaches that are very much in it. And the two guys that he reached out to on the offensive side were Lincoln Riley and Cliff Kingsbury. And the quote that he gave to Sports Illustrated at the time was, "I want to be Oklahoma. That's the offense I want to run." Okay, so Lincoln Riley, who could help Mack Brown get back on his Mark Morrison, right? Cliff Kingsbury, who could help Mack Brown get back on his Mark Morrison? That's Return to the Mac for those of y'all that just don't get the reference. And they both pointed to Longo, who at the time was at Ole Miss. Longo turned Sam Howell into the best ACC quarterback north of Clemson, okay? And turned Drake May into a Heisman frontrunner this year after May did what, frankly, only Heisman Trophy winners do. So since 2010, he is one of just a few guys to throw for 4,000 yards, 35 pass TDs, rush for 650 yards with 7 rush TDs in a single season. That was last year. The other quarterbacks that have done it since 2010, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, Marcus Mariota, Johnny Manziel, and RG3. So that's 4 Heisman winners and Deshaun Watson. That's not bad. That's not bad. And he brought with him to Wisconsin former UNC O-line coach Jack Bicknell Jr. So you understand that the run game and the pass game are going to be married into a kind of pro-raid, the kind that Lincoln Riley made famous at Oklahoma. And certainly a dude that knows from quarterback play because, again, Mack Brown asked 2 of the better quarterback developers in the sport what they thought. For instance, Baker Mayfield, first-round draft pick. Kyler Murray, first-round draft pick. Both those guys won the Heisman. Caleb Williams won the Heisman, probably the first guy off the board in 2024. And, of course, Cliff Kingsbury produced the best NFL football player today in Patrick Mahomes, right? I think those things matter when you're talking about a guy like Phil Longo, who is 2 for 2 on quarterbacks that he has selected to be starters for him, which is why everybody should be paying attention to Tanner Mordecai at Wisconsin. It's not just that Mordecai also is a former Oklahoma quarterback signed in 2018 with Lincoln Riley. You're welcome. It's also that he is used to slinging it, man. He had back-to-back seasons of 3,500 pass yards, 30 TDs, and 12 or fewer INTs at Southern Methodist, okay? You give him some dudes, you let him cook, and you see what you got. And then the run game, it's already there for you. Braelon Allen, we all know, is a dude. That's a freshman, sophomore year with back-to-back 1,200-yard rushing seasons and at least 10 TDs. Also Ches Malusi, right? You'll remember that Javonte Williams and Michael Carter were doing work at UNC. So he knows how to use 2 tailbacks and a great quarterback to go score a bunch of points. And that is what you are looking to do at Wisconsin because that is what you haven't been able to do. If you go down by 3 touchdowns, do you have the kind of offense that can wipe that out? Do you have an eraser on that offense? Do you have an offense that you can marry with a defense that can shut people down? And then take that next step, right? Past winning 10 games a season and into winning Big Ten championships and playing in the college football playoff. Basically, you're trying to break the ceiling that Michigan broke through a couple years ago. And that is difficult. Just ask Wolverine fans how they feel about it. I'm bullish on what Phil Longo and Mike Tressel are going to be able to do in 2023. I know that Luke Fickell is a winner. I know that he knows what it takes to build a winner in the Big Ten. And I know that Wisconsin football fans really want to be good in the worst way. So I am all in on Wisconsin being a force in the Big Ten in 2023 and beyond. Thank you for watching the #1 college football show. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so that you don't miss any of the best college football coverage in America.